October the 16th, 2019. You're looking at the 5-day forecast from the National Hurricane Center, and the system we were looking at this morning had a 40% chance of development, and the cone did not show this far out as far as in time, and we're going to be looking at this coming ashore about the 19th, which is only just a few days away. Saturday, as a matter of fact. And at that time, the cone had extended up, guys, if you remember, to where you couldn't tell if it was going to go up into Texas or Louisiana. But that front that's coming down, and we'll look at the radar, is pushing the storm further back to the right or to the east. Now it looks like it's going to cross the panhandle of Florida and move up through Georgia. And one of the problems with that is that it will have a much longer journey across the Gulf of Mexico to absorb more warm water, more moisture, and stay offshore. And that's how they develop in the Gulf. So you guys in Florida, especially where Michael came ashore, from Mexico City, in that whole area, or Mexico Beach, in that whole area, guys, pay attention to this storm. Now, I'm not saying it's going to become a hurricane, but it's going to bring a lot of moisture and a lot of high wind. And earlier today, when it went from a 40% chance to a 50% chance, guys, the rotation was already becoming evident at the surface level. But notice in this cone, remember, this is not the size of the storm in this orange area. This is the area that the center of the storm is predicted to travel at, somewhere in between this area. And if we look at the Canadian model, and we will, and the Navy model, it's going to show you about the center of this cone. But again, it looks like the Mexico Beach, Panama City area through there may be where the center of this storm, regardless of the strength, comes ashore. Now, let me say this. I want to back up just a moment. This is the 5-day forecast, and I'm going to go to the 2-day forecast. And the difference was this morning, we had a 30% chance over a 2-day period and the 40% over 5-day period. But now even the 2-day outlook is showing the same 60% chance of development. So that's telling us it's out over open water, and it's just going to have to strengthen from here, and it's going to be dealing with a major cool front that's coming down from the north. That's why we got clear skies in the southeast this afternoon. If you were in the central part of Mississippi and north of there, we have some beautiful sunshine come in and warm it back up into the upper 60s. It was getting damp and cool. Now, here in central Mississippi tonight, guys, you're going to have real field temperatures in the 40s, so be aware of that. But let's look again at the 2-day forecast. And just quickly, and this puts a little bit of radar under it, when the 2-day forecast matches the 5-day forecast, and you can see at the top what we're looking at. This is at 7:38 p.m. tonight Eastern time. Then everything's matching up, and the storm's already in that position to strengthen. And it really has nothing to tear it apart. You see some of the clouds moving to the right here, or northeast, but that's what's going to control the storm. If you look ashore in Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi, all the way across and up the east coast, moving into what's becoming a bombogenesis in this northeastern. Guys, when they say bombogenesis, that means it can drop 24 points in pressure within 24 hours and becomes extremely powerful at that point. Well, all of that's pushing down and moving to the east. That's why the system that we're looking at with the orange X is not going to move into Texas. It's going to steer it back into the Florida Panhandle as of the latest models. Now let's go to the satellite images as it's beginning to get dark over this part of the U.S. As I'm doing the video, it's 6:51 p.m. Central Time. And you can see as far as Louisiana, Mississippi, guys, we started getting those clear skies, and it really came in and took some of that cool dampness out of the air. But on the surface, we're getting movement from the north. If you look at the surface on the edge of the beaches of all the southern states, there's a movement from north to south that's pushing out to sea. Check that out. Now that's curving the path of the storm down in the Bay of Campeche. It's about to get full-fledged into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, let me point something out. Here's the area of the storm right here. But notice the amount of moisture that's being pumped way ahead of the storm, a couple of days ahead, that's going to come across the projected path of the storm again a couple of days earlier. And there's a lot of high clouds in this area, so be aware that even though you've been getting rain, and I don't know how that area of Florida has been the last few days, but up in central Mississippi, we've had torrential downpours, flash flood watches and warnings, and you've been able to see from the videos. But anyway, before this, what's called Invest 96L now, comes across wherever that section of Florida that it does, there's going to be a lot of saturated ground and low area flooding ahead of it. Now, let's remember, when the last couple of storms that we've seen form into the Gulf of Mexico, they were very strange, but they didn't have very much time to be out in the open Gulf. Remember, the one came across, came down through Arkansas and over Alabama and out into the Gulf, and then we saw it come through, what was it, Barry, that came through, and Louisiana and Mississippi caught a lot of flash flood, raining, and tornadoes. Remember that? But it didn't have long to stay over the Gulf and strengthen. This one's going to have about the longest pass across the Gulf of Mexico that you can get. Now, it will be beneficial in a couple of ways. One, it's going to release some heat, and it's going to agitate the water like an aerator in a aquarium, guys, because we've had a lot of problems with the water in the Gulf of Mexico. One, from the amount of fertilizer and chemicals that are sprayed on agricultural area, which is all across the nation, and it comes down the Mississippi River and Ohio rivers and all the other rivers, and then it ends up into the Gulf. And then you see this algae bloom, and you see this flesh-eating bacteria. And then we had this year, Louisiana opened the Bonnie Carey Dam during the Mississippi River flooding, guys. And what happened, it came out, all of it came into the Gulf of Mexico, this extra fresh water into areas that it wasn't meant to be. And it killed off the shrimp and the oysters because they're saltwater animals. It just wiped it out, decimated the seafood industry in this area. That's all in court now on how Louisiana can regulate that Bonnie Carey Dam without destroying the seafood industry in Mississippi, and that spreads, guys. So this storm will help stir that up somewhat. That's what happens. And if you don't have these, you have these large pockets of ocean that has no oxygen. Nothing can survive there. So maybe this will help, but watch for the flooding. Now, again, let me point out one other thing. This morning we were watching the projected path of the storm, possibly going to Texas or Louisiana in that area. And as this front has progressed south across the southern U.S., it has bent that path, but we're just going to have to watch it. And something that I thought was kind of ironic in a way was some of the news down in Tampa were saying one thing about this Gulf storm is Tampa has nothing to worry about from any tropical weather. And every time they stick their foot in their mouth like that, it comes back to bite them. So you guys from Tampa in that area, watch it, because that front that's pushing this storm further out into the Gulf may fool a lot of people. And you can see there's already weather building in your area. And remind your meteorologists that they don't know. They're not in control of this. But when you see a system in the Gulf like that in the front that's coming down, it's not going to go straight. It's going to veer and be pushed left or right depending on what kind of front you got. Now, 3 of the most popular models, again, look at your timestamp at the bottom, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. They are somewhere between the Panama City area and south of there into somewhere crossing north of Tampa and headed over Jacksonville, Florida. One of the models, the TABD, has it staying ashore after it comes across the Florida Panhandle, moving through Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, up into Virginia, and moving out into the ocean. But we know this is going to change. But again, Tampa in that area, because of that front that's pushing all of this down, watch for this model to change and maybe move the storm further south. Let's look at some of the timing on this. Notice as it progresses, moves again towards Florida, and I'll advance it one frame at a time. So it gets close to the coast of Louisiana right there, so keep in mind that your outer bands are there at near the last 80 miles or so of the Mississippi River Delta. It's the 19th, okay? Now, so you got to be careful at that point, just watching all along the coast, because if that front died out that we're watching push south before it's supposed to, then the storm could move further north, right? That pressure's off of it. We'll just have to see. But let me advance this forward as we go into through the 19th. Now we're at the 20th. See where the storm is? Off the coast of Mississippi, very close to the Mississippi and Alabama line. Let's move forward, still into the 20th. In the center is a shore between Mobile, Alabama, and the Panama City area at this time. This is, again, the U.S. Navy model. And as it comes through, this is October 20th, and this model is the one that shows it going up through the Georgia and Carolina area. So by the 19th, guys, everybody needs to be prepared. And really, if you're in South Louisiana in that area, you need to start being prepared for it because you're already getting rain. But the Florida area, because of that front and the push south, I have a feeling that between Tampa and the Panama City areas where it will come ashore, I'm not predicting the strength, only looking at the path. I will say this. It is crossing the longest path you can take across the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. So it's something that you know and I know we have to watch. Let's look at one other model. Now, this is the Canadian model. It's one of the more accurate. We watched it for the last 2 or 3 years with these hurricanes coming in. But this is the 18th. Notice the location of the center circulation. So we move this forward. Again, very close to the Navy model, just a little bit further south, and you're still in the same general area. Here we go in the 19th, guys. It's somewhere along the coast between Louisiana and Florida at this point. But notice it comes, as far as the center, is right there, just over, again, that area between Panama City and Orlando in that area, a little further north. But let me advance this forward. It still has it moving over parts of Georgia and Carolina, but a little further out to the east than that. So anywhere in this area, we know it's going to change between now and Saturday. So you don't have a lot of time to prepare. We've been getting rains. If it comes across Florida in the area to where we see all that cloud cover now and the rain's coming through, we're going to have flooding. But this will be a test of how much energy this thing will pull out of the Gulf of Mexico, guys. We're watching it. You watch it. It's a heads up. By the way, watch for a video, if I can get it finished tonight, about a chess game that's being played with the U.S. Constitution in D.C. I think it'll be an interesting video. It's a heads up. Be safe.